Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I welcome you all on the very first segment of the International Lifestyle Medicine Conference. And I'm delighted and I'm very, very happy today that it's a very happy occasion for Rifa Institute of Lifestyle Medicine and Pakistan Association of Lifestyle Medicine to organize this conference. And I would like to introduce the very first speaker of our conference, who is going to conduct the workshop on psychology of happiness. And he is Mr. Rafiq Jaffer. Rafiq Jaffer is a psychologist and the director of the Institute of Social Sciences, which was established in 1978, and Entrepreneurship Development Advisory Services, established in 1988. He has conducted research, trainings, evaluations, and workshops with over 8 UN agencies and 20 government ministries. He has written 4 books and over 250 research and workshop reports, papers, and training manuals, many of which has been published in Pakistan, USA, UK, Canada, Norway, and Netherlands. And his introduction will go on and on. So I would like to welcome Mr. Rafiq Jaffer. And I'm extremely grateful, Dr. Rafiq Jaffer Saab, because I know you were too busy with the project, heritage project, which you were handling. And thank you very much for giving us time. Please, you can start now.
बहुत शुक्रिया डॉक्टर शगुफ्ता. Excuse me. I just had my cup of tea with white sugar, which you described as a medicine for myself. So I am following your diet for the last, I guess, 14 years. And also, besides being a faithful follower, I now have enjoyed attending all your conferences, and I'm very delighted to be part of this one. I didn't realize I was going to open the conference. So first of all, congratulations to you, your team, and the university for organizing this. And may you have many, many more. So I will start by giving an overview. Since this is a workshop, so one expects to not just have a lecture, but to have an interactive session. So just to give you an idea of what I'm going to cover in this session. So I will start by a concept called irrational ideas. And it just happens that my master's thesis was on irrational ideas. I developed the first questionnaire based on the work of Dr. Albert Ellis. And I was granted a fellowship in the US while I was a student because of my work. So I will discuss what kind of irrational ideas there are and what can we do to deal with those ideas. Then I will go to the concept of the mentality of scarcity and abundance and how the two types of mentality have different effects on our mental health. I will then move on to the concept of circle of concern and influence and how our circle of concern can be very large, but our circle of influence can be very small, and how to expand the circle of influence. After that, I will be talking about an approach called quadrant 2 thinking. It's about the approach, which is you can call the preventive approach. You can also call it focusing on the important but not urgent. And after that, I will conduct an activity on how to create a resourceful state within a few seconds. I will be using some techniques of neuro-linguistic programming there. In the last part of my session, I will be doing a couple of exercises on how to handle manipulative criticism and how to be persistent and how to learn to say no. And throughout my session, I will be asking the participants one question, and that will be, how does this session link to happiness? And I will look to your answers for that. So I will start off with a few statements, and I would like you to, if you have something to write on, or maybe you can use your phone or whatever, or your laptop, just I'll read out a statement, and if you agree or disagree, just write yes or no. Don't think too much about it, just the first answer that comes to your mind. So here are some of these statements. So I'll read out the first one, and you can just write yes or no. So the first statement is, if someone abused me verbally, I would naturally feel angry. So please write yes or no. And yes would also mean most of the time, and no would also mean some of the time. The second statement is, I would feel quite nervous if I had to address a large audience. The third statement is, one's emotions are not in one's control. And the last statement is, my present problems are linked to past events which continue to affect my behavior and emotions. So these are the 4 statements, and I would now ask, I would go back to the first statement, and I would ask somebody from the audience who has agreed with this statement, if they could just speak up and tell us why they agree with this statement. Somebody from the audience.
Yes, sir, it's obvious.
What is the answer? What is obvious?
Sir, that if somebody abuses us verbally, we will naturally feel angry at that time.
Okay, let's talk about you. Would you feel angry?
So definitely I will. If the abused language used is not up to that mark, which I cannot digest, so I'll feel angry on that person.
Okay. Suppose that person was a very good friend. Would you still feel angry?
So if I talk about myself, definitely I will. If she's a friend, then I will tell her that you have used these words and that are not, compatible with my personality. So you do not use them. If she is a friend.
Okay. Would you feel angry if the person was a mental patient who was maybe a psychotic?
No, sir. Because being a doctor, that is, taught to us that these are the ethics, and we know the mental state of that person, that he's capable of doing so, and he's not physically fit. So definitely for the patients who are not mentally well-being, so we won't feel angry at that time.
Okay, I want you to keep these responses in mind, and I will be showing a slide related to this, but I want to move on to the next question. So the next statement was, I would feel quite nervous if I had to address a large audience. So anybody who would agree with that can just speak up. If nobody speaks up, then that means nobody would feel nervous. Or maybe you don't want to admit the fact.
Sir, it depends on the exposure you have. I think if you're exposed to this stimulus many times, then you won't feel nervous. But if you are, forced to stand up for the very first time, addressing a large audience, then might be some feel nervous. That depends upon how much cortisol your body releases that time.
Okay, that's a doctor response, definitely. All right. How many of you would agree that one's emotions are not in one's control? So all of you think that your emotions are in your control?
No, sir, I don't think so.
Who is this?
Sir, me, Samia Khalid.
Ji Samia, would you tell us, are you saying your emotions are not in your control?
Yes, most of the time emotions in a new situation, I feel that our emotions are not in our control, and we normally give a formal or a spontaneous response.
Okay, Samia, if you heard a big a gun going on right now, wherever you're sitting, somebody fires a gun very close to you, what would your reaction be?
Maybe I shout
You'll shout.
loudly.
All right.
Yes.
Suppose you were a commando in the army and the shot went off. What would your reaction be?
I will control my all emotions because I will be in a leading position.
Okay, so now you see the difference, that it is not the gunfire which has caused you to shout. It is how you viewed that gunfire. When you view it from the perspective of a commando, your emotions, the emotions that you exhibit are much more different from the one if you are a lay person who has no experience of guns. So I'm building up my point here, and I'll take the fourth and the last statement. How many of you believe that the problems that you experience today are linked to something which happened in the past? Anybody who agrees with that?
Sir, again, I would say, Dr. Fatma Ihsan, I would
Yes.
say it varies from person to person.
Mm-hmm.
Some persons are in control of their behaviors and thoughts. So if you can
Okay.
control your thoughts and someone has post-traumatic stress disorder, then that situation would be different.
All right. So you are, in a sense, bringing me to my point of what I called the ABC approach. What is the ABC approach? The A is the activating event, B is the belief about that event, and C is the consequence. So when you say, for example, that if somebody abuses me, which is the activating event A, I will naturally feel angry. What you miss out here is the belief within. So your anger is not caused by the abuse. Your anger is caused by what you think about the abuse. So as I don't recall the name of the first questioner, what was Dr. something? I missed her name. Who said that I will naturally feel angry? Who was that?
So I was Dr. Aisha.
Aisha?
Ji, sir.
Okay. So Dr. Aisha very rightly said that if the person is a psychotic, then I will not get angry. And if you recall what happened 3 days ago in Charsadda, a mentally deranged person burnt some pages of the Holy Quran, and a large mob attacked the police station to get hold of him. And when the police resisted because he was a mental patient, they burned down 4 or 5 police stations and so many vehicles. So you see what happens if the activating event, which was in this case burning of the Holy Quran, the natural reaction, which again is also not a very healthy reaction, that you are trying to lynch or murder that person, which is the consequence because you got very angry. What you forget is it's your belief about that person which made you so violent and so angry. So the point is, if you believe that the activating event causes the consequences, you lose control. So anybody can trigger any emotion in you. Any event can trigger any emotion in you because you have certain beliefs about that event or that person, and you don't realize that it's the belief which is creating the negative consequence. Once you realize that it's your belief which is affecting your emotions, you come in control. Nobody on earth can make you angry or aggressive or depressed. It is basically your belief system which is causing it. And once you understand that and you get control, then your answers to most of the questions that I asked would be no. So somebody can abuse you, whoever. Remember, you don't feel angry because of the abuse. You feel angry because how you interpret that abuse. When you say your emotions are not in your control, again, what are you doing? You're making yourself helpless. I often ask people when they say my emotions are not, आज mood नहीं बन रहा पढ़ने को या कुछ काम करने को mood नहीं बन रहा. So I say, where is this mood coming from? Is it coming from outside or inside? And when they think about it, they say, no, it's coming from the inside. Once they realize that I am creating the mood, then they are in a position to change that mood. But if you think that your mood is created by the environment, the weather, the news on the TV, or whatever, then you lose control. Regarding the issue of past events, we a lot of the time we think that whatever we are feeling, whatever problems we are experiencing is happening because of something which happened in the past. The reality is that the past is gone. It cannot have any effect on your present behavior. Whether you had a broken family, bad childhood, you were abused, whatever. It is not that event or that experience which is creating your present problem. The present problem is being created by what you say about that event, what you think about that event, and how do you process that event. I would give an example. One of my favorite dramas that I saw on television was called Udari. And in that drama, you see this girl who is sexually abused, but who learns and who overcomes all the shame and all the guilt and all the fear and testifies in court against the person who abused her. Of course, the whole drama builds up her capacity to process and to understand that it was not her fault and she was not to blame. So again, I also give an example that when a person who has been driving rashly all his life, who never wears a safety belt, who overtakes wrongly, who overspeeds, as soon as that person comes on the motorway, he changes all his behaviors. So all that past suddenly disappears and he follows the lane and he doesn't overtake wrongly and he doesn't overspeed. Why? Because he knows that he'll have to pay a fine if he does. So what is maintaining the behavior? It is the consequence which is maintaining the behavior. So your past is not affecting your present behavior. It is how you interpret the situation. So what is ABC? It's a theory of how to regain control, how to handle negative emotions. So if we look at it in more detail, what you find here is A is the activating events. For example, what do you think happened? What would the camera see? That's the event. Then beliefs, what did you tell yourself? And the consequences are how did you act and how did you feel? So that is the ABC approach. And when we look at irrational beliefs, what we find is that there are certain beliefs which are disempowering, which create negative emotions. If you look at arguments and fights between people, you could take the example of spouses, for example, or even others. There are certain words that they often use very frequently. Words like chahiye, nahi chahiye, hamesha, kabhi nahi. And you will notice that these words are very common in fights. If you analyze quarrels and disputes and fights, let even the example of marital. The other common thing that we tell ourselves is if something goes wrong, we say it's awful, it's terrible, it's horrible. So a small problem is exaggerated and becomes a very large problem. Also, we often have low frustration tolerance. So we think we cannot stand something or we need something, we cannot do without it. So we reduce our capacity to tolerate. Another thing that we do is we judge people, or we judge ourselves, and we basically put down ourselves or others. These are some examples of what are called irrational beliefs. And as I said, my master's thesis, I developed a scale to assess the level of irrationality in an individual. And that test was standardized on 500 people. So if you look at the ABC approach, you can look also at the options that are available. I see Dr. Fatma Riaz's hand raised. Ji, Dr. Fatma, you want to ask or say something, or was it raised?
Sorry, I raised it previously. I forgot to just.
You forgot to put it down.
Okay, thank you.
When you when you forget something like this, I usually say कि mistake में गलती हो गई क्योंकि pressure में दबाव आ गया था. Okay, so you can see the activating event can lead to two different paths. If you adopt a rational belief, you create a healthy consequence. But if you adopt an irrational belief about the event, you create an unhealthy consequence. So it is you have the choice, you have the control, but you have to be able to see and diagnose your irrational belief and challenge it. And we use the word disputing the irrational beliefs. So in this first example, I've taken an example from a classroom. And so if you are, let's say, a student in a classroom and you don't understand something in your class, and one of the irrational beliefs could be, I must be able to ask questions in fluent English. I'm giving this example because I know a lot of students, and not just students, but others as well, who feel that they must either speak perfect English or they should not speak English at all. So what happens is that they feel anxiety because they are not able to speak fluent English. So what did they do to reduce the anxiety? They stop asking questions. So what can you do here? You can dispute your irrational belief that I must be able. See the word must. Usually you will find words like must and should when you look at irrational beliefs. So if you dispute that, you can then create an alternative, which would be something like, it is okay if I am not able to ask questions in fluent English. So here is an example of how you can dispute your irrational belief. You can ask yourself whether the belief is good for me, is it helping, or is it self-defeating? Is there any evidence to support it? Is it logical? Is it as bad as I am thinking? Can I really not stand this? So some questions like this, you can challenge your irrational beliefs, and then you can replace them with rational ones. So in the case of English, again, you can see how you can challenge your less than perfect English and come up with alternatives, and you can still continue to ask questions in the class. So what happens is, once you dispute the irrational belief, you create a new effect, and these would be new rational beliefs. Now, a negative emotion can also be a healthy emotion. It doesn't necessarily have to be unhealthy. So emotions like disappointment, concern, annoyance, sadness, regret, frustration are actually healthy negative emotions. They become unhealthy when they turn into being awful, terrible, horrible, and you feel emotionally depressed. It is there when the negative emotions becomes unhealthy. So you can replace it with constructive behaviors. So I will, to just summarize what I've just discussed, what happens is you have the activating event, you have an irrational belief, and it creates an unhealthy consequence. What you do is you dispute the irrational belief. Once you dispute the irrational belief, you replace it with a rational belief and create a healthy consequence. and you create an effective change. So now ABC has become ABCDE. So I was hoping that we could do a small exercise. Let's see if you are up to it. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen here so I can see. So if you can, the exercise I was thinking of doing, if you are up to it and if we have a few minutes to do it. So if you would think of an activating event which caused a negative consequence and identify the irrational belief and then dispute it and challenge it with a rational belief. Would you like to do this exercise? We have about 5 minutes to do it. If you would like to, I'd like to see a show of hands. Can you show your electronic hands? Okay, I'm seeing a lot of yeses. So I'll start the screen show again and I'll come back to, so here is the activity. Okay, I've just been told that there are some participants who are foreigners, so maybe I should not use Urdu in my presentation. Here is the exercise. Think of an activity, an event which frequently leads you to feel anxious, afraid, depressed, or inferior, and look at the belief, look at the consequences. Once you have done that, dispute the belief, challenge it, and see if you can create a positive effect for that event. And once you have done it, whoever would like to share can share it in plenary. And we have about 3 to 4 minutes to do this exercise. So those of you who have said yes, please go ahead and try to carry out the exercise. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and see if anybody has completed the exercise. If you can raise your electronic hand.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, Dr. Samia.
Participants will give the answer on the chat box.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted maybe if somebody would like to share in the group, are they allowed to share? Can they speak? Okay, I'm seeing messages that they can't speak. Maybe the admin needs to unmute people. They probably muted.
Sir, actually, there are 118 participants, so
right.
They have only chance to write down the message.
All right. Okay, but if you can speak, I would like at least one person who is interested to describe whether they were able to do the exercise or not. So, is that possible? I can see the chat, and mostly it's saying we can't speak. That's what most people are saying here.
Sir, I can speak on behalf of participants. If
right.
they write down their messages, then I can convey the link.
Yeah, please do that. That's a good solution. Has anybody completed it?
If anyone from presenter want to speak and complete the task, then please inform to me, and I will give you the option to speak. I think Dr. Javeria want to share something. So, Dr. Javeria, soon you will receive an option of mic, then can speak.
Okay, I think because we have a limitation of time, so you already have the tool, the ABCDE tool. It is with you. You can use it. You can practice it for yourself. You can teach it to others. And if you want to check it up, you can check up the irrational ideas and the ABCD approach. You will get more details on the subject. So let me move on now and to the next part of my presentation. Okay, here are a few questions I'm going to ask you, and then I'll explain what is the topic of this second part of my presentation. So here is a question. If only one copy of a textbook is available in the library, do you try to get the book before anyone else does? So if you are honest with yourself, please choose an honest answer. The answer can be just yes or no. So just note down the answer to the first question. The second question is, do you sometimes feel good if someone you dislike or is against you is humiliated or in trouble? So if you do, please write yes, otherwise no. The third statement, is it important to compete with others? Yes or no? So these are the three statements. Now I'd like to ask somebody who said yes to the first question.
Yes, most of the people say yes from first person.
All right. So would somebody like to tell us why they said yes?
Yes, participants, you can write why.
And Samia, if you can read it out.
I think it's a natural response.
It's a natural response. All right. Okay.
A natural response that has been developed, especially by the Pakistani community, I believe.
Okay. Okay. So it's natural to think me first. So I am more important than the rest, and my needs are more important. Okay. Okay. Thank you for being honest. Let's go to the second question. Those of you who chose the yes answer to this, how many of you actually said yes to this one? Question 2.
Sir, everybody said no.
All right. Okay. Fine. Maybe then you should go and watch Hum TV, because you will find a lot of characters who would say yes there. Okay, let's go to number 3. Is it important to compete with others? How many of you said yes?
The mixed response.
All right. I want to hear those who said yes. Why yes?
Sir,
Dr. Tuba Jamal.
sir, if a person does not want to compete, there are many people around that person who continuously compare person with others. So I think so it is they make a person to compete with others. If a person is not trying to compete with others or just going on his or her own path, but the people around us continuously compare one person with other. So it makes the person to naturally start comparing him or herself with others.
Okay, you've used the word naturally. It is not human nature. Okay, let me give you an example of this. And I am arguing that it is not important to compete with others. Let me ask you a question. If you look at the Sufis, we have great Sufis in Pakistan, Sufi poets like Bulle Shah and Shah Hussain, Waris Shah. Do you think they were competing with others? What do you think?
No, sir.
What do you think, Dr. Tuba?
No, sir, I don't think so. They were competing with each other.
Yes. So look at the people who we consider the greatest human beings and who have followers in the hundreds of thousands. And this is not only in Pakistan, they have followers across the world. But they were not competing with anybody. Abdus Sattar Idi, the great philanthropist, was not competing with anybody. He was doing what he thought was the best thing to do. So what I'm trying to say, if you want to compete, the best person to compete with is yourself. Because if you compete with yourself, you will continue to improve and grow. But if you are competing with others, number one, if the others are very far below you in whatever category, then you won't need to keep improving, because you will be the first always. So you will stop improving. It's like the hare and the tortoise race, you know. So instead of competing with others, let me show you an example of this. So here is an orange, and let me describe the situation. The situation is that there is a brother and a sister, and it is night time, and they are in their house. Everybody has gone to sleep. Both of them are hungry. There is nothing to eat. So let's look at the situation that there is this orange, and the orange, there's only one orange, and the shops are closed, so they can't get another orange. And both of them want the orange. So what would you do in this situation?
They can share the orange.
How?
Dividing it half.
All right. So each one of them takes half of the orange.
Yes.
Okay. Is there any other option?
Not in my mind, sir, right now.
Anybody else? Any other option?
I think we can give it to the person who is more hungry.
Okay.
But it's not a common practice, ma'am.
Yes, you are right.
That's why she said you can give it. She didn't say I will give it.
You are right, sir.
Okay, now let me tell you what happened. The boy and girl did exactly what the two of you have suggested. Not the two of you, the first answer, which was Dr. Tuba's. They said, okay, let's divide it into two. So the boy wanted to have the pulp, and so he threw away the skin and he ate the pulp. The girl actually wanted to make marmalade jam. So what she did was that she threw away the pulp and she kept the skin. So was that a good solution, dividing it into two parts? Anybody?
I think it should be according to the need of a person at that time. That's what you need. Like you said that one person is wanted to eat pulp and the other one wanted to use the skin. So if they just talk with each other and they tell other person what they needed from that thing, so they can both got the things which they need.
Yes. So what we are saying is, if you listen to each other, if you find each other's needs, you can come up with a much better solution. So the solution they came up is what was called a lose-lose solution, but you could come up with a win-win solution. So if you go back to the issue of competition, when you think of competing, you think of win-lose, and you don't think of win-win, that both you and the other party could win. So so what are we looking at? We are looking at what is called the mentality of scarcity and abundance. That's what we are looking at. So what is the mentality of scarcity? That there are only limited things, and your sense of worth and security comes from being compared with others, and someone else's success means your failure. The abundance mentality is the mentality that there is plenty for everybody. They do not define themselves through comparison, but they define themselves from within. They have an inner sense of worth, and someone else's success is also their success. So that's what is called a win-win situation. If I gave you the examples of Sufis, I gave you the examples of Abdul Sattar Idi. These were people for whom it didn't matter what others thought. They had an inner sense of security. They were not competing with anybody. I remember I spent a day with Abdul Sattar Idi, and somebody in my presence, her reporter, said to Mr. Idi that there have been very serious allegations against you in the newspapers, so you should immediately answer them because they have accused you of financial misappropriation. And I very distinctly remember what Idi Saab said. He said, they are trying to divert me from my work. And that was it. He didn't respond at all to the allegations. And remember when Idi Saab died, the whole of the country was in mourning for him. So that is what a person who has a deep inner sense of worth and security. That's the abundance mentality. So if you look at the maturity continuum, what you find, most of us think that we should become independent. So independence is fine. It's better than being dependent. But the highest value is not independence. The highest value is interdependence. It's not I, it's about we. So when we learn that interdependence is the most important value, if you remember, Dr. Shagufta was talking about a lot of divorces and a lot of conflict, marital conflict, and so on. One of the reasons of these conflicts is people think that they have to be independent. Whereas if you go into a marriage, the most important thing in marriage is not independence, but interdependence. And once you understand that, you can have a win-win marriage rather than a lose-lose marriage. Okay, I'm coming to the next part of my presentation, and I will not introduce the topic yet, but let me just ask you a few questions. So, how many of you very firmly believe that people should not throw litter in the open? If you do, please put yes in the chat box or raise your hand. So do we have, how many yeses do we have? A few or many?
Most of the say yes.
All right. So suppose I tell most of you who said yes that I don't believe you. So I'm challenging all of you by saying that you don't actually believe that people should not throw litter in the open. And if you want to prove me wrong, tell me, what have you done to stop people from throwing litter? Have you done anything? And if you have done something, is it enough? Has it had an effect? Has it stopped people from throwing litter?
No.
Because if you have not done anything about it, then you don't believe in it. People who actually want to create a change do something about it. They just, it's not just holding a belief and saying, I believe in this or I believe in that. Most people only say these things. They are not willing to talk, to walk the talk, as the Americans say. They only talk the talk. They're not willing to walk the talk. I haven't seen many people who have started a campaign on cleanliness in their own community or the place where, around the place where they live. Very few. It's very rare. But I've seen a lot of people saying that littering is bad and people should not throw litter. So what am I saying? That I'm talking about the circle of concern and influence. So let me explain what is this. So when you say that people should not throw litter, but you don't do anything about it, it means that this idea is in your circle of concern, but it has not become your circle of influence. So when you have a circle of concern, there are many things in that circle, but you don't do anything about it. So they remain there. Once you start doing something about them, your circle of influence starts to expand. Let me show you how that happens. See, in this example, what has happened? So if you take the example of littering, if you were to start a campaign, let's say a campaign if you are in a medical college, you start a campaign to educate students, teachers, other people, if it's a hospital, people who come there and so on, and you work actively and you create a group. What are you doing? You are expanding your circle of influence and reducing your circle of concern. And that is known as being proactive. Unfortunately, most people take the opposite route. Instead of expanding their circle of influence, they reduce it and expand their circle of concern. So they keep saying, oh, the situation is very bad, nothing can be done, people are illiterate, etc., etc. So the more negative sentences you say, the more reactive you become, and your circle of influence begins to reduce, and your circle of concern begins to grow. So what is the point? The point is you have a choice. You have a choice of just talking about issues and doing nothing about them, and just feeling good that I'm very concerned. Well, that is not going to have any impact. So if you, on the other hand, think, no, I'm going to do something about this. So in other words, if you look at the big changes that occur in society, you always have a champion. There is a champion for a cause, and that champion makes the difference. So it's your choice whether you want to become a champion for something, or you just want to talk the talk and not walk the talk. Okay, moving on to the next topic. And the next topic is quadrant 2 thinking. So before I go, I want to do a mental exercise with all of you. So to do this exercise, you would need to close your eyes. And Dr. Samia, if you can make sure that everybody has closed their eyes and nobody is cheating. So, because it is not possible to do this exercise unless the eyes are closed. So,
Yes.
So are your eyes closed, everybody? I hope so.
Yes, sir. Hope so.
Okay. So if your eyes are closed, please keep them closed. It will take a couple of minutes. So keep your eyes closed. And I want you to imagine that you have died. And it is a couple of days after your death. And it is your kul, the ceremony which normally after a day or two after the death of a person. And you have been buried, and now there is this kul ceremony, and people are reading the Quran and so on. And after reading the Quran and the ceremony is over, and you have friends and family and your colleagues, maybe your students, your neighbors. Now, what I want you to do is to think that if this was the situation, what would you like all these people to say about you? What would you like? Not what you expect that they would say, but what you would like them to say. So think about what your family would say, what your relatives would say, what your friends, and what you would like them to say. No, please note the word like, not what they would say, but what you would like them to say. Your colleagues, your students, your neighbors, your friends, what would you like them to say? So try to hear the words that they are saying about you. Imagine it is your kul and try to hear the words that you would like to hear and focus on those words.
So definitely we would like to anybody say it's a good she's a good girl or appreciate us or say some positive for us.
Okay. Now, I want you to focus on what those positive things are. I mean, what would they say? Would they say she was very hardworking, very honest, very helpful? What exactly are they saying? What are the good things?
Very useful for others or very honest.
All right. All right. So everybody, if you listen to what you would like people to say, you
Some
would
participants say she is very kind. She was very kind.
all right. Okay. What else?
Soft spoken,
Soft spoken. Okay.
generous,
Generous. Struggler.
very good to me. These
What
are
was that?
common responses participants asked in the chat box.
All right. Now, why I've asked you to do this exercise, and you are free to open your eyes now. And I apologize. Maybe some of you might have felt uncomfortable doing the exercise. But the point of the exercise is that when you do this exercise, what happens is that you are basically focusing on the most important things in life. Because the things that you would like people to say about you are the things that you should be doing in your life, because those would be the most important things in your life. So taking that point forward, I want to share a few statements and I'd like your response. For example, how many of you would say, of course, if you are on a lifestyle medical conference, I'm sure everybody would say yes, but that's not the important part. The important part is that regular exercise is good for my health, but I do not exercise regularly. Are there some people here who agree with this statement, who say yes to this statement? Anybody?
That's true.
All right, Dr.
Muhammad
Aisha.
Zia, Dr. Fatma, all are agree. Dr. Nurul N is also agree.
Okay, Dr. Aisha just unmuted herself and then now she's gone to mute again. Dr. Aisha, do you agree with this statement?
So I do agree.
All right. So can I ask you why you don't exercise regularly?
So because of the time constraint.
Okay. You have given the answer that I have heard very often. There are a lot of people tell me that we have heard that your time management exercises are very good and we would like to attend them, but we don't have the time.
Yes, sir.
So you have given the same answer. So if you go back to the, sorry, go ahead.
Sir, being female, I think that if we do not get time, then we increase our non-exercise activity thermogenesis, like giving time to household chores. So that is also a satisfaction that we are doing some activity which is burning our calories.
Well, I am not saying that exercise only means you go to the park or you do yoga. If you are doing household work and you are getting exercise, even that is fine. That is exercise, all right. Any means of getting exercise is fine. But a lot of the time what happens is we do not care about, we know it's good for us to exercise, but we do not do it because, as Dr. Aisha said, I don't have the time. But what happens is that when you neglect the body, a time comes, and of course you hear this from Dr. Shagufta all the time, that the body tells you that you are abusing it. Now, when you look at the exercise that you just did, that person is generous and helpful to others. So then you need to ask yourself, am I doing what I need to do so that when I'm not in this world, people will call me that I'm generous? But a lot of the time you say, I don't have the time. I will be generous, but this time I'm too busy with A, B, C, D, my profession, my family, my children, my in-laws, whatever. So what happens is you keep postponing the things which are important but not urgent. So let me. How many of you would say that you experience difficulty finding things at your home or at the workplace? Are there some people who would say yes to this? Anybody?
Yes, sir. Dr. Zubia Khan say yes.
All right.
Dr. Rahila also say yes.
All right. Okay.
Shaista say not at all.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to go to the next question. I deal with emergencies a lot of the time. When I say emergencies, I don't mean those of you who work in the emergency department. What I mean is people who are constantly, they haven't prepared for something and then they get into a panic and then they have to suddenly they realize they have to do something. If you do you experience that? Anybody? Any yes?
Yes, Muhammad Ibrahim say yes. Dr.
Okay.
Shaista say no.
Okay.
Hafiza Faiza say sometimes.
All right. Okay, here's the last question. I waste a significant amount of time in trivial activities. Now, probably that doesn't apply to too many doctors, but what about activities like Facebook and WhatsApp and chat and do you think you waste time in those activities or activities like that, or just watching brainless TV shows or anybody?
Yes. Yes, most of the people say yes. Even some doctors say yes.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to come to the concept of the time management matrix. What is the time management matrix? There are some things which are important and urgent at the same time. These are called quadrant 1. Things like a crisis, an emergency, a deadline, you have to make a presentation, whatever, and it's important and it's urgent. Then there are things which are important but not urgent, like preparing or planning or prevention activities, like exercise, for example, clarifying your values, improving your own abilities. For example, this workshop is an example of important but not urgent. If you didn't attend this workshop, you would not have any emergency or any big issue, but it is important. So building relations with others, relaxation, going for recreation, these are examples of important but not urgent activities. There are some activities which are urgent, but they are not important. Like you get a phone call, you have to attend some meetings. They may not be important, but they are urgent. Then there are some things which are neither urgent nor important. And when I gave the example of Facebook and chatting and WhatsApp, where there's nothing important there and it's not urgent. If you don't do it, nothing will happen. But you still didn't. So activities which can be called escape activities, watching some useless TV show which has no meaning, no value, and so on. So these would be examples of things which are neither important nor urgent. So what are we saying? That if you want to focus on the most valuable things in life, then you should focus on quadrant 2. So what is quadrant 2? It is the things which are important but which are not urgent. If you focus on that, so by attending this workshop, you are focusing on quadrant 2. You're focusing on what is important but not urgent. So when you do regular exercise, it may not be urgent, but it is important. The effects may come in many years, but they will eventually become urgent if you do not do them early. So all things related to prevention, for example, are quadrant 2. One of the reasons why multinationals rule the world is because they have developed processes, systems, procedures. So they don't have to take decisions every time. The procedures are written and you can just follow them. And by doing that, you are able to deal with issues that come up within the system. So if somebody is gone from work, that will not affect the organization because they have systems and processes in place and they have trained the staff to follow those systems. So keep this in mind when you went to that exercise of what you would like people to say after your death. Most of the things that you would like you say are in quadrant 2. They are about your values, about your relationships. They are also about the good things that you did for others. They are not the urgent things which we focus. Okay, so that was number 4 of my session. And now I'm coming to the 5th one, which is creating resourceful states. And in order to do this, I'm going to make you relax. And in order to relax, I'm going to try and put on some music for you. Let me see if that works. So when I put on the music, please tell me if you can hear the music or not. Just give me a little time, and I have selected some music for you. Okay, if you can hear the music, please raise your hand.
Yes, sir. It's audible.
Okay, thanks. So I'm going to make it a little soft because is it very loud or is it okay? Okay, Dr.
Sir.
Samia, can you hear
Yes,
it?
sir. Yes, sir. It is okay.
All right. So what are we going to do? I'm going to put you in a very relaxed state, much in a better state than what you were a while ago. No dying. This is going to be fun, good, relax. Okay. So I'm going to give you some instructions to relax and just follow my instructions. And
Sir, now we can't hear the music.
Okay. Can you hear it now?
No, sir.
You can't hear it?
No, sir.
Okay. I think when I speak, the music goes off.
Yes, sir. I think so because now we can hear the music.
Okay. So when I speak, the music tends to go off. Is that the issue?
Yes, sir.
All right. So I'll just stop the music and we'll do it without the music. Okay. So I would like you to close your eyes. Please close your eyes. Take a slow and deep breath. Hold your breath. And exhale your breath and feel the tension leaving your body. Take another deep, slow breath. Hold your breath. And now relax. Feel the tension leaving your body, the place you're sitting in, going out of the room, going out of the building. Tension going far, far away, and you're feeling nice and relaxed. Okay, now I want you to imagine a scene which is very relaxing. So you are walking in a large park, a lot of flowers, the grass is green and you are walking on the grass and there are white clouds in the blue sky, bright blue sky, white clouds, fresh air, you can smell the fragrance of the flowers, and you can see a lake and water in the lake, beautiful blue, clean water, and the sunlight is falling on the water, and you can smell the flowers, and you are really having a very nice time, feeling very relaxed. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to focus on the image that you have in your front of you and focus on the color of the image, whether it is colorful, bright, whether it is dim or bright, whether it is a large image or a small image, whether it is a moving image or a stationary image, whether the image is in the center of your vision or it is in one corner. So focus on the image. Now I want you to smell the image, whether it has a nice smell or not a nice smell. I want you to taste the image, whether it is sweet, sour, bitter. Taste the image. Now I would like you to touch the image and feel whether it is rough or it is smooth. So you have had multiple ways of experiencing the image. So it was visual, I would like you to hear the image. What is the sound of the image? Is it loud or soft? Is it rough or smooth sound? Pleasant to the ear or unpleasant? Okay, so you have experienced an image. Now what I want you to do is I want you to cue that image. When I say cue, I want you to use some stimulus and I want you to link the image to that stimulus. For example, one possible cue would be to snap your finger. So what happens? You snap the finger and you associate the image with the snap. And you repeat that cue. It can be anything. You can touch your head. You can, move your hand. Whatever image cue you want to use. So if you were to snap your finger, you would do it a number of times with your eyes closed, so that the image and the sound of the snapping become linked with each other. So you repeat it, and this method is called anchoring. So you anchor the stimulus and you link it, you make it a cue, and by making that cue, you can go to that resourceful state of being happy, relaxed within a second, just by snapping your finger or using whatever cue you are using. So what you have learned here, and this you can develop through practice, is whenever you are feeling in a negative state and you want to move out of that negative state, one way to do it is by using the cue, the anchor that you have, and that will help you to immediately go back to a resourceful state where you are happy, where you are relaxed, where you are energized. Okay, now to practice this, what I'm going to do...
We can say it's a conditioning.
I'm going to... I want you to keep your eyes closed, and I want you to imagine a situation which creates negative feelings in you. Any situation which makes you anxious or angry or frustrated or unhappy, I want you to look at that state, try to visualize that state where you would feel, maybe feel inferior, maybe feel unhappy, depressed, angry, whatever. So I want you to experience that state. And I would like that while you are experiencing the state, look at the image. Look at the color of the image. Look at the, when you look at the image, look at whether it is a bright color or a dark color, whether it is large or small, whether it is moving or stationary. Look at the image, whether the image is located in the center or in a corner or at the bottom or the top of the image. Look at whether the image is it is colored or black and white. Okay. So look at all the characteristics of the image. Also look at the smell of the image. What does it smell like? What does it taste like? And if you were to touch the image, what kind of feeling do you get by touching it? So you have looked at this negative image. Now what I want you to do is I want you to step by step change the image. So if we look at the image and if it is, let's say it is black and white, and the first image that you had when you were very relaxed, let's say that was a colored image. So change the present image from black and white to a colored image. Change the image, okay? Okay. If this image is, let's say, stationary and the relaxed image was moving, so change the present image and make it into a moving image. If the present image was small and dark and the relaxed image was bright and large, change the present image and may also make it bright and large. So step by step, you change the nature of the image that you are holding and you make it like the image that you had when you were in a resourceful state. So change the smell, change the taste, change the touch, and change the whole image step by step until it becomes like the image of being when you were relaxed and in a resourceful state. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I would like you to open your eyes and I'd like you to see how you're feeling about this negative thing that you had. Are you still feeling that negativity, or is there a change in what you were feeling? And if there is a change, please let's find out. Were you able to change the negative image into a positive one, and or is that negative image still making you upset or angry or feeling inferior? Okay, some of you are saying it's a better image. Some of you saying negativity is gone now. That's Sadaf. Still feeling sad and upset, Dr. Zobia. Still upset because the impact is deep. Okay, all right. So what we are hearing is that some of you were able to reduce the negativity. For some, nothing changed, and so on. So obviously, this was a short exercise, and through practice, you can develop the skill. What you can also do, if you're still feeling negative, is if you close your eyes and if you have created an anchor or a cue, then use the cue and try to go back to the resourceful state that you were in. So you can move away from that negative feeling by using the cue. Now, some of you may be able to do that, some of you may not. So that is obviously because normally in a face-to-face workshop, we would be spending a lot of time in doing these exercises and coming up with producing the changes within ourselves. So it requires practice. Those of you who are interested to learn more about this and to practice it more, you can look up NLP, Neuro Linguistic Programming. It's a well-known and well-established methodology for producing change in oneself using certain tools and techniques. The technique that I have used here is a technique for changing your imagery. And by practice, you can learn to create a resourceful state within a few seconds also. Just to give you an example, some of you may have seen the Oprah Winfrey Show, which is a world famous program. In one of those shows, there was a woman who came to the show and she was very, very scared of snakes. She was so scared of snakes that if she saw the picture of a snake, she would go into a panic attack. So she came to the program and there was an NLP trainer with her. And while the program was going on, he took her to another room. And after about 30 minutes, while the program was going on, the trainer and the lady came back, and the lady had a live snake around her neck. It was, of course, a non-poisonous snake, but she was there. Within 30 minutes, her phobia or fear had disappeared. So you can see the power of imagery change, how it can change all kinds of. So if I go back to what I said earlier, that it is not the past which is creating your present problems, it is how you look at the past or how you visualize the past. So you actually maintain the problem rather than the problem comes from the past and affects you. So by changing your imagery, you can make negative emotions disappear. You can make your fears, lifelong fears that you have had all your life, you can make them disappear. I have myself practiced this with quite a few people. To give you one example, a lady who wanted to travel to the US from Lahore, and she had a panic about sitting in planes. So when the plane door would shut, she would go into a panic attack. So I taught her these tools that I taught you today. And the next day or a couple of days later, she traveled to New York. She didn't have a panic attack. So I'm giving you this example. There are many others. So you can learn how to create a state of resourcefulness, of relaxation by practicing these techniques.
Meditation practice that Dr. Jafar asked to practice, it's a very common practice that psychologists use for relaxation. So I suggest to all of you to practice it, and hope so soon you will feel that negative thoughts are very, very easily, we can control these thoughts.
Samya, sir is back.
Sir is back. Yes. आवाज कम करो. Sir is back, Samya.
Sir, can you hear us?
Yes, I can
Sir,
hear
please
you, but
turn off your mic. Sir, please turn on your mic. Sir, your mic is off. Okay.
Okay.
Now we can
All
hear
right,
you
can
and
you hear
see.
me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me share screen again.
Sir, we can see you. Okay.
Okay, let me share the screen. So I have gone through the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 topics of my session today, and I move.
I think there is a problem again, Fatma.
Should someone contact him?
I think you should contact Rafiq Jafar Saab. And Samia, can you please contact Sultan Saab? What is the matter? I'm sorry.
Assalamualaikum, ma'am. It's from the sir side. Actually,
Okay.
it's okay from our side. There's no problem.
Samia, then can you please contact Sir Jafar?
Okay, I contacted him.
Ji.
Okay, so
So
basically what Sir Jafar has told up till now, I believe that the main aspect is that how we perceive the things. It's all about our perception, which develops our emotions, and these emotions then lead us to our manifestation of behaviors. So basically we have to control our thought pattern. By controlling our thoughts, our emotions will be, to some extent, we have to practice it more and more. Our emotions will get somehow in our control, and then our behavior will start to change. Acha, that exercise, that ABCD, we didn't do it. Would anybody like to participate in that ABCD exercise till the time sir is not around? Action, belief, consequences, then the dispute the belief, and then what is the effect? Meanwhile, we can try that exercise. If in the chat box, if anyone can say about any particular action, what is their belief and what is the consequence of that action on their lives. We can divide that component into bits and parts. Let's first just discuss the action, belief, and consequences. We can focus on any action, the belief about that action, and what are its consequences. Can anyone share in the chat box any action you would like to change which have some bad consequences in your life, personal, professional life? I hope I'm audible to all. Dr. Humaira, can you hear me?
Yes, Fatma, I can hear you, but somehow I don't know. Baki, abhi, I think they are interacting, they're writing in the chat box. I start presenting the person. You can share their chats.
Okay, I'll share in the chat box.
Yes. We're trying to get Sir Jafar to see what is wrong at his end.
ठीक है, मैं मेरी वो ना सुई
Yes.
exercise पे अटकी हुई है. चलिए, let's do it.
Okay.
Action, belief, consequences.
Acha ji, can you hear me?
Sir is back. Yes, sir. Welcome back, sir.
Okay, I'm going to put off my video because there is some internet issue. So, okay, for the exercise that I want to do, actually, I need the video. So I'll just put it on. Okay, so here is the exercise that I want to do. I want all of you one by one to criticize me. Criticize means you have to say something negative about me. It could be my session, it could be my face, my way of speaking, my mustache. It has to be a negative statement. And it can also be a false statement. Like you could say that you are totally bald, or you could say your beard is not looking good on you. It could be a false statement, but it cannot be a positive statement. It cannot be a neutral statement. It can't be a question. It has to be a negative statement. So please, one by one, say something negative about me. It can be true, it can be false. Go ahead. Okay, Salma Shahab says, I speak very slow. It makes me feel sleepy. Yes, I do speak slowly. You're right, Dr. Sumaira. My voice tone is monotonous. Okay, what else? Anybody else? Yes, my background is not appealing at all. There are homeopathic medicines at the back. Yes, you're right, Dr. Shaista. I don't today I didn't have a good internet service. Okay, anybody else? Let's hear something negative about me. Oh, Dr. Samina Altaf, you're right. My glasses are not good. I agree to that. Okay, anybody else? Anything about my session that you didn't like? Or it can be true, it can be false, but it has to be a negative. I'm not very assertive. Maybe I'm not very assertive. Maybe my session was not engaging. Okay, I'm going to stop here. Okay, my session was, and I'm going to show you what I was trying to do. I was using a technique, and that technique is called fogging. So let me explain what the fogging technique is. It is about handling manipulative criticism. So it is a technique where if somebody is trying to give negative criticism to you, you can handle it calmly. You can acknowledge the truthful part in it, but you remain your own judge of what you do. So you don't become anxious or defensive. So what I was actually doing was I was listening very carefully to your criticism, and I was judging whether the criticism was 100% true, partly true, or not true. And I was agreeing with the statements which were true. And I was, when you said something like, my session was not engaging, I didn't agree with it. So you might have noticed I didn't agree. I said, maybe my session was not engaging. So what I did was I did not say no, or I did not defend myself. So one of the things you learn when you learn to be assertive is you don't need to defend yourself. You don't need to prove to others that you are a good person, that you are right. You don't have to defend yourself. So if somebody is trying to make you feel uncomfortable or defensive or manipulate you, you don't have to play the game of trying to defend yourself and trying to prove that you are right. So this is a technique which you can use when somebody is trying to manipulate you and is trying to criticize you without any basis. So the important thing here is you keep the judgment to yourself. You accept what is true and correct, and you agree with it fully. But if something is untrue, you can say that maybe I am like that, or maybe I do that, but you don't have to agree with it. So this was a technique which was called fogging. And now I'm going to practice another technique with you. For this technique, I need some volunteers. So let me stop sharing and see, would somebody, I'd like somebody to try to sell something to me, something that one can see. It could be something like a mobile phone or whatever, something concrete which you can show, and you try to sell me whatever that thing is. Who would like to volunteer for this? Rabia Anjum, please go ahead. Rabia, what are you going to sell me, Rabia? Now you'll need, please unmute Rabia so she can speak up. Rabia Anjum. Can somebody unmute Rabia?
Rabia, you can write. Rabia, you can write down.
So you have to be directly in contact, or
No, it has to be spoken,
okay,
not written.
Okay, so if someone from the panelist can join you, sir, can any of
anybody,
okay.
Anybody. Just you have to sell me something and do it fast.
Any volunteers? Okay, sir. Any I can sell you some consumable item as well.
Whatever.
Like anything. I mean, food items.
Anything.
Okay. Where about these apples? These are very fresh. Just taken up from the farms. full ripe and juicy? Is it okay or some other item?
I don't want to buy it.
So you can just have a taste of it. I'll cut it and you can have a piece and just taste it, and then you can give your opinion about it.
I don't want to taste it.
Okay, sir, it's very cheap. You can compare the rates from the market. It's reasonably cheap.
I don't want it.
Okay, sir, would you like to take it for your home? Your children might like it.
I don't want it. Okay, now Rabia is trying to ask a question. So you can read the question and others can help you to sell it. They are welcome to give suggestions to you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Please, someone can give suggestions. I've tried my level best, but sir is not willing to buy the apples. Can anyone think of any option?
Yeah, actually people should be able to unmute, and I don't know if that's technically possible or not.
Sir, I hope you can see these are the best apples.
I don't want it.
So it's good for your immunity.
I don't want it.
So if someone is writing an apple a day keeps the doctor away.
I don't want it.
It will keep you healthy, safe.
I don't want it.
Protection from COVID.
I don't want it.
Finally, sir, someone has written, do you respect your opinion?
Okay. All right. I'm going to stop here and let me share the screen again.
Okay.
So what if they're free? Would you want them?
No, I don't want it.
Even if they're free?
I don't want it. Okay. So here was the activity. You were trying to sell me something. And can you see the screen?
Ji, sir, we can see it.
Okay. So what is the technique I was using? I was using the technique called broken record. What does broken record do? In the old times, you would have these records playing on the record player and they would get stuck. And when they got stuck, they would keep repeating the same sentence or same verse again and again. And that's exactly what I was doing. I was repeating a sentence again and again. So what is the skill? By calm repetition, teaches persistence without having to rehearse arguments or angry feelings beforehand in order to be up for dealing with others. Allows you to feel comfortable in ignoring manipulative verbal side traps, argumentative baiting, irrelevant logic, while sticking to your desired point. So you could have tried all kinds of things. You could have said, you know, you don't care about me. I'm very poor. You should help people. You could have, in a way, tried to manipulate me and other techniques. But my answer would have been the same. I don't want it. If I had, by saying this sentence, I'm not giving you the opportunity to come, you know, to get an excuse or to, if I had said, I don't have the money, you would have immediately said, okay, take it for free. So what we are teaching here is what is called persistence. A lot of the time in our lives, when we should have said no, we said yes. And then we paid a very heavy price for it. And I'm not talking about your marriage, I'm talking about other things. But yes, in many ways, in many situations, we agree to things or we come under pressure and we adopt certain behaviors or in this case, buy certain things which we don't need because we are not able to say no. So if we go back to the original point that I made about being assertive, so see what I said. I said you have the right to judge your own behavior, thoughts, and emotions, and to take responsibility for their initiation and consequences upon yourself. You have the right to offer no reasons or excuses for justifying your behavior. So when you adopt these assertive rights, you become a strong person. You don't need to justify yourself. You don't need to give excuses. And so what happens is you become a much more relaxed person and you are able to handle all kinds of negative manipulations without getting upset or angry or reactive. Also, some other things which you can learn. One of the things which you have the right to do is you have the right to change your mind. Most people do not exercise this right. So what happens is that once they commit to something, they think that they cannot now go back on it. But the reality is that if you feel that by sticking to a decision, it will be very harmful for you, you have the right to change your mind. Similarly, you have the right to make mistakes and be responsible for them. Also, you have the right to say, I don't know. A lot of people are afraid to say, I don't know, because they think they will appear inferior or stupid. Similarly, they are afraid to say, I don't understand. In Pakistan, it's very common. You ask somebody, you are trying to find the way to some location, and you ask somebody, that person doesn't know where the building is, but he will just give you an answer because he is not willing to say, I don't know. Similarly, in a teaching learning situation, students often don't understand something, but they don't speak up. And the teacher assumes that they have understood. And so the student loses out because the student is afraid and thinks everybody else is understanding. So I should also keep quiet. But the reality is you have the right to say, I don't understand. Okay, so we have, just to summarize where we are now, let me share with you a method of giving what is called an assertive message. This is something you can practice. For example, if there is somebody who is coming late and is part of a team, you can give an assertive message, like you can say, I get angry because I think it is wasting the time of all the other team members, and we are never able to get through all of the agenda items. So you are describing the consequence of what happens when somebody does show some negative behavior. So then you give the positive message that what you would like the person to do. I would like you to consider finding some way of planning your schedule that lets you get to these team meetings on time, because that way we can be more productive at the team meetings and we can all keep to our tight schedules. So what is the assertive message? It describes the behavior very, very specifically. It describes your feeling, why it is having a negative impact on you, and what you would like the other person to do. Now, there are different situations where you can give this assertive message. You could give it to somebody in the family, somebody with who is repeating a behavior which is creating problems for you. You can do it in your working place. You can do it with your students, with your colleagues. So even with somebody in authority, even with somebody who has a little higher position than you, because when you do that, what you're actually doing is you're asking the person for help. You're not accusing the person or blaming the person. What you're saying is, because of a certain behavior, I am having a certain problem. So if your boss is asking you to write a report and deliver it in one day, you have the right to say that, sir, it's not possible, I need more time. Otherwise, the quality will be affected or whatever. So the research shows that you can use an assertive message to basically deal with uncomfortable or negative situations you want to change. And what you find is, by doing so, you can, the chances of getting the other person to change increase. There is no guarantee that the other person will change, but the chances tend to increase, and therefore you are more likely to get what you need. And what is important in an assertive message is, when the other person responds, then you stop giving the message and you start listening to the message. So you go back and forth when the other person is giving a message, you listen very carefully. But after you have listened, you go back to your own message. You don't give up so easily. So what are we learning here? We are learning techniques of one, how to say no. On the other hand, the technique of how to make the other person say yes, how to convert a no to a yes, how to convert a negative to a positive behavior. So that is, so here is a summary of my presentation. We started off by looking at irrational ideas and how to dispute them. We looked at the mentality of scarcity and abundance. And how the mentality of abundance can help us to be more positive and happy. We also learned how to increase our circle of influence and reduce our circle of concern, thereby becoming champions of a particular cause. We also learned how to spend more time in quadrant 2 thinking, which is being preventive, focusing on the important but not the urgent. Then we learned an NLP technique on how to create resourceful states by using imagery, changing imagery, anchoring the resourceful state to a cue, and learning how to change the characteristics of a negative state into a positive one. And finally, we learned 2 techniques of being assertive. One is fogging. It is called fogging because it is becoming a fog and not resisting, but accepting what is true and not saying no if somebody is saying something bad or wrong about you. So in being assertive, we learned 2 techniques, the fogging technique and the broken record. You can practice these techniques, but remember, you have to decide where to use which technique. So if somebody on the road pulls a gun on you and says, give me your mobile phone, don't try to use fogging or broken record. Don't try to say repeatedly, I will not give you the phone. He might just shoot at you. So you have to judge which technique to use where and basically use it accordingly. So I'm going to stop here. We have about 10 minutes. So I thought I'll leave a little time for any questions or comments from you. So Samia, can you handle the comments and questions so we can, I'm going to stop sharing. Yeah.
Yes, sure, sir.
Okay. So any questions or comments, we can take them before we close. And also I want to say that at the end, I want to show you, well, there's a little song that I had composed. So maybe I'll just...
Dr. Sara, want to see your second red slide.
Which slide?
Yes, second red slide.
I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean. Do you mean this slide? Is this the slide you're saying?
Yes,
Second
I think
red.
this one. Dr. Sara, you can, I will share with you the recording of this workshop, so don't you worry. Thank you so much, sir. Your presentation was very impressive. And I think so due to shortage of time, most of the people not able to practice the true meditation and practices that you shared with us. But I hope so next time when we have face-to-face workshop with you, we will learn a lot from you.
Okay, thank you very much. And I wish you all the best with the rest of the conference. And I would encourage whatever little that you have been able to learn to practice the tools at every opportunity that you get. And it is the practice which is going to make all the difference. So good luck to all of you. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Rafiq Jafar Saab. Thank you for a very enlightening workshop. And I did like the interaction of the audience with you. So thank you very much for your active participation from your busy schedule. Thank you, Rafiq Sam.
Thank you very much, ma'am. And thank you very much, respected sir, for the wonderful session and sharing your knowledge with us. Really, thank you, ma'am and sir. Happiness begins with a decision to no longer feel sad. So today I just requested to all to keep smiling always during and after the session. Thank you, everyone. Regards and Jazakallah khaira, everyone.